Hey everyone, happy Thanksgiving week. We're going to try to pump this thing out a day early because we'll have football or like legitimate football a day early if we call the Egg Bowl, Mississippi State versus Mississippi on Thursday. Plus, kind of like going through some of the recaps and articles this week. Like no one's doing anything. Like there's not a lot to read. No one's pumping stuff out. This is the last week of the regular season. Excuse me. So that's kind of wild. Um, so I know some of you will be traveling, and hopefully to give you something to listen to. And thank you for listening. I thought we would do this a day early, and you know, I don't have school, which is great. So that makes things even better. So we'll start with the top 10. It's unchanged. I had James Madison in the undefeated, formerly undefeated James Madison in the top 10. They're out because they lost to Appalachian State. So, and I think this is pretty rightful. And I always try to put out my top 10 before the Associated Press, before the coaches poll, before the playoffs. So you guys don't think I'm like just cheating. Like, this is who I legitimately think have a top 10 best teams in the country. But Missouri was ranked ninth last week, and they're now 10th in my ranking. So I think that's the rightful spot. But again, we talked about it last week. Looking at James Madison's schedule, I just felt like, if you don't lose, like you move up. And based on their schedule, I thought it was legitimate enough to move up into the top 10. But Missouri's been playing great, and then they held on against Florida and they've done a really good job in the SEC. Everyone else stays the same. Louisville is 9, Alabama 8, Texas 7, Oregon 6, Florida State 5. That's one where, do you bump them down with their injury at quarterback? I don't know, but they didn't lose. So 4 Washington, 3 Ohio State, 2 Georgia, 1 Michigan, which means we've got number 1 Michigan versus number 3 Ohio State, which is weird because they've got the AP poll has Georgia first, and then everyone has Ohio State second and Michigan third. And I don't know how I feel about that, but we'll talk about that later in the broadcast. Good news if you are actually betting money, you are now ahead for the first time all season as we enter the last week of the regular college football season. North Carolina State destroyed for a little bit Virginia Tech. The final score was 35 to 28, North Carolina, North Carolina State. They were 2.5 point dogs on the road, which is weird. At one point, the score was 35 to 14 with 5 minutes left in the third quarter. So that was like, it's like, hell yeah, this looks great. But then Virginia Tech started clawing back in garbage time and scored 21 unanswered. But yeah, I feel pretty good about that. And if you look at some of these dudes who do this for a living on television, they're like not good. Like I take screenshots of that and send that to my buddy sometime. Like I don't know the name of the guy on College Game Day, but he's like 15 and 30 or something stupid. So I feel pretty good about being 6 and 5, and we'll see if we can keep pushing it this week. Best nightcap. The nightcap situation was kind of strange because all the good games, it's getting to the point where like all the good games are now primetime games because the record and the rankings, like who the good teams are and who the bad teams are. And so you want to put all the good matchups in some sense, all the good teams in prime time. Um, so we really should have had most of our games during prime time, and I'll talk about that with Backyard Brawl. But UT and Iowa State started at 8 o'clock Eastern, and I really thought Texas was gonna get upset. And for a while there, that game was just a mess. I say a mess, it was just low scoring, no touchdowns. Um, at halftime, Texas was up by 3. The score was 6-3. And then kind of like very similar to the OU BYU game, which was messy offensively, especially when Dylan Gabriel got injured, quarterback for Oklahoma. Um, Defense saved the day. Like the the winning score for Oklahoma against BYU was a pick six, 100-yard pick six return. And I think the same thing could be said for Texas. Like their defense really suffocated the Iowa State offense and got enough turnovers and stops to put that Texas offense in good field position and enough turnovers to really make sure that Iowa State never got anything done. Um, One of the things that was interesting about that game is this is the first time Texas has won 10 games since 2009, which is absolutely like wild to me. Like, even if you had asked me, and I kind of have to follow Texas football, I would have said maybe 2019, 2017. I don't know why. It just feels like, Texas hasn't been back, but they've, I mean, they've been in BCS bowl games, right? Sugar Bowl. Sam Ellinger with that, hey, we're back. Um, that's wild. So, I mean, the game was good, but it wasn't great. But a lot of the games weren't amazing. One of the things I will say, we'll pivot to the backyard brawl, is and I totally believe, if like you think I'm just joshing and being like, well, this is what I was gonna do. I had for best backyard brawl, instead of North Carolina at Clemson, I had Kansas State at Kansas. And that game was absolutely phenomenal. Like that was a phenomenal game. And it was great watching all these games in the multi-view. So you had our game of the week, Washington at Oregon State in one box, Iowa State hosting Texas in another box, and then Kansas State in another. And it was like, oh my God, because sometimes the way they configure it, the way Google configures it, you can't get all the games you want in there. But I didn't do it. I literally deleted it. I'm not joking, because I didn't want to have like three games at prime time. Like part of the reason, and I've talked about this before, that we do this. I say we like it's a company. Me. The reason why I do this is as a guide for people who are like, oh, what should I be doing at 11 o'clock? Okay, watch this game. This is the best, backyard brawl. These two teams are close together. What about 2:30? What about 6? What about 9? Right? Like just kind of an all day affair. And because I just hate sitting around all day for these games when there's like games on. So that's why we picked, I'll say we, um, North Carolina at Clemson at 3:30. And I was interested in that because of the spread. It was Clemson by 6.5, and they ended up just like manhandling North Carolina. That wasn't really a fun game, and it really sucked to watch that game just be kind of meh and see Kansas State just be absolutely phenomenal. Um, I did not get to see our boys James Madison play Appalachian State, and that game looked like it was freaking awesome. Um, James Madison is going to fall behind Appalachian State in the fourth quarter, 20-12, with 3 minutes left. And they are going to James Madison going to score a touchdown and 2-point conversion to tie with less than a minute. They're going to kick a field goal in overtime, and then they're going to lose. But that looked like a really sweet game. And again, the Mountaineers of Appalachian State do the thing that they always do, which is just like wreck people's dreams. So that was ESPN's play to get us to buy stupid ESPN Plus. But anyway, and then the final game, Washington versus Oregon State. I mean, Oregon State looked fine. Ugalele, I always feel like I'm mispronouncing that dude's name. He never looked. He looked like he did when he was at Clemson in this game. You know what I'm saying? Like ever since he's left, he's had these up and down. games or points in the season where he just looks like he's overwhelmed. And Oregon State's been on a run the past few weeks, and he's looked really good. But it kind of looked like, oh, this is what he looks like against really good competition. Which Washington's defense is pretty good. So that was kind of disappointing where there was never really a moment it felt like they were going to come out ahead. It always looked like they were uh they were going to lose that game, which was in the rain, despite the score. I'm trying to pull up the here we go. Let me just a second. So that game was 22-10 going into the fourth quarter, and they kept it close, but it just didn't seem like they had it together. I mean, he threw two picks, 15 to 31 for 164 yards. I mean, like there was nothing about that felt like Oregon State knew what they were doing. It was a good, I mean, it was a good game, but because Washington never really like pulled away a ton, but it wasn't a great game. And it was just so weird leading up, um, because I do look at the spreads a lot, obviously, to see them favored by two against Washington. I don't. It was just weird because he's been that way kind of all season. So anyway, that is the review of last week. Let's get into this week. I'm gonna do two best bets because I doubt the first one I have. I don't doubt it. I mean, I made the play. It's on the website. I'm gonna give you two. I'll give you two. Okay. The first one is these guys have been just like killing it, and it's one of those things where, especially with college football, but I think with any sport, like a team gets hot out of nowhere, and you're like, oh, this is not gonna, last. They're just on a streak. They're on a heater. It's gonna putter out at some point. The hype's gonna get to them, and it hasn't at all. So my best bet is Arizona to cover 12-point favorites against Arizona State. Arizona State's been pretty bad this year, but they're not. Here's the thing that's crazy. They went on a six-game losing streak. They even lost to USC, which is just disgusting. But then things got a little weird. So, like when they played at Washington, Arizona State only lost 15-7. I don't remember that game at all. They beat Washington State 38-27. Yeah, bear with me here. Okay, so at Washington, Arizona State only loses by 8 points. They host Washington State and they beat them. Okay, so Washington State's a bad team. Then they go to Utah. They lose 55-3. Then they play at UCLA and they win. What is going on? And then they host Oregon and get the doors blown off again, 49-13. You know what I'm saying? So like that was my initial like, dude, I'm betting Arizona this week for sure. I think you get to the point in the season where Arizona just wants to like rub people's faces in how much better they are than everyone thought they would be. But looking at some of these scores, I'm like, 12's a lot, but I still like it. Like for example, I think Oregon's a good team, a great team. 49-13 in Tucson. So you cut that in half a little bit. Like I think Arizona. Same thing with Utah. Like Utah right now is 18th in the country. That score is 55-3. Arizona 17th. All right. So that's number one. Your second, like, bet of the week. And this is the one I wish I did. And it came across my radar and I was like, oh yeah, this would be great. I should do that. And then I didn't do it. And then fell in love with Arizona. And okay. Missouri is going to Fayetteville, Arkansas. and they are 7-point favorites. Take Missouri. Take Missouri. Arkansas is horrible. Um, they lost to Auburn at home. Yeah, at home. No, like there's no way. Arkansas lost to Auburn, who just lost to New Mexico State, 48 to 10. They lost to Mississippi State 7-3. Mississippi State is horrible. They got like drubbed by Texas A&M 55 to 10. Meanwhile, Missouri beats Tennessee 36 to 7, beats South Carolina 34 to 12, and beats Kentucky 38 to 21. So I think Missouri's gonna do some dirty stuff to Arkansas, 7-point favorites. Take one of those. I wish I didn't. I feel so good about being above 500 in my betting that I'm like, oh, let's just do both, and I'll probably lose both of them. Okay, best nightcap. Cal at UCLA. Cal has really been this interesting team because they've been scoring points. Like they can put up 50 points, excuse me, against USC like 3 weeks ago. And same thing when they were playing like UNT. Like they put up some serious points. If you look at their last 5 games, here's how many points they've scored: 27, 42, 63, 50, and 34. That's insane. Um, I'm sorry. The 34 is wrong. They only scored 14 against Utah. So I lied. 14, 49, 19, 39. I'm sorry, 42 and 27. Okay, I just confused everyone. They're pretty good. Offensively, they're pretty good. Um, and they've kind of like hung around, and UCLA is also wonky because they lost to Arizona State, they lost to Arizona, they struggled a little bit against Colorado, but they destroyed Stanford and they beat SC pretty handedly. And the ESPN matchup predictor has a 73% chance that UCLA wins. The spread is 9. I think it's going to be a really interesting game. Um, just based on the way that they score so many points, Cal does. So, and then the other thing that puts it as the nightcap, sorry, I'm silencing my cell phone, um, is the idea that this is the last time these guys play for a while, as far as I'm aware, because UCLA goes to the Big Ten next year. So, classic Pac-12 after dark should be a high scoring affair. Um, Saturday night, it's going to be a beautiful 61 degrees in Pasadena, California. So definitely check that one out. It should be pretty good. Most intriguing, the Civil War. We're featuring Oregon State again. Um, this is one of the few ranked matchups of the weekend, besides the big game that we'll get to later. Yeah, I'm double checking the situation, and yes, this is only the only other game where both teams are ranked outside of the big one, the game. So that's why it's most intriguing. And then the other thing is, I've been wrong all season about like these classic trap games. I don't think it's worked out very well. Like Iowa State last week, I thought that would be a classic trap game. It wasn't. I mean, you could say for half it was, but it wasn't. This this one, it's got to be right. I mean, it's a rivalry game. They hate Oregon. Oregon State hates Oregon. It's a night game. Um, it's on Friday, so it's like a short week. I think Oregon's gonna win that game. I mean, that's not like going out on a limb. Um, they're 11 and a half point favorites. And again, Uiagalelei, I think I got it right that time. He's not, he's just not good enough. Like, even looking at the stat lines of him versus Bo Nix, Uagalele's got 2,400 yards passing, 20 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. Bo Nix is 3,500 yards, 35 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Like it's just two different offenses. I think the Beaver defense is good enough to hang, but it's not even in Oregon State. It's at Oregon. So, but because that matchup is on a Friday, so you get some football Friday night, and it's the only other ranked game where both teams are ranked. Um, there it is, most intriguing. I'm interested to see if Oregon State can pull it off. Best backyard brawl. This could have gone under most intriguing, but it's not. But it's been made more intriguing because the starting quarterbacks for both Florida State and Florida are out. Jordan Travis, if I mean I didn't see it the first time they showed it, but man, that foot looked pretty gnarly. Um, and after he went down, Florida's quarterback Graham Mertz was out. Florida State and Florida both won their games, but I'm pretty sure now I'm doubting that. Um, I think Florida State's got the better backup quarterback. He's a junior, redshirt, so he's been there for 4 years. Um, when he came in last week, he was 13 to 23, 2 touchdowns. Um, Meanwhile, Florida's got this Max Brown guy, is like a 3-star sophomore from Oklahoma. So I don't know. Florida's got some fight in them that's been really interesting because they have been a dumpster fire. And I've said that multiple times on this podcast. Like, I don't think Napier's doing a good job down there. He probably should have stayed at Louisiana, but they've been competing. I'm trying to pull up that game is at two. mm, There it is. Oh yeah, that's a night game on Saturday. Florida State's a 10-point favorite. Um, so I'm pulling up the yeah. Florida has lost 4 of their last 5 games, including to Arkansas. They barely beat South Carolina, who's trash. They kind of hung with LSU for a little bit, and then LSU pulled away, and then same thing with Missouri. So this is going to be, I think, a really good game. A lot better than it should have been. This line opened at 11, yeah, 10 and a half, and now it's only at 6.5. So it's going to be good. I think it's going to be a classic matchup between those two teams, and it's nice to talk about how, and this is going to be in the swamp. Um, these teams are from two different conferences, and like we've got so many situations in the Pac-12 and the Big 12 of these rivalry games that are ending because teams are in different conferences, and it's like that doesn't happen with Florida State and Florida. So anyway, that game, 6 o'clock. I'm sorry, 7 o'clock Eastern on Saturday should be really interesting to see if Florida can pull it out. And here's what sucks, kind of. I mean, they'll play in the ACC title game. Excuse me. They should get in the playoffs if they win out, but does anyone want to see that without their star quarterback, Jordan Travis? Like, I kind of don't. But Florida may stop them, so that'll be interesting. And then finally, that gets us to the game of the week. I'm about to sneeze. Which is the game in Michigan at 11 o'clock. Sorry, noon Eastern on Fox. Um, Everyone knows how I feel about this. Excuse me. I don't think Ohio State is as good as everyone says they are. Um, I don't like what I've seen out of their offense. I think their offense is relatively inept. I don't think McCord is a great quarterback. I think that was pretty apparent in the Notre Dame game as well. Notre Dame doesn't have like a great defense. Excuse me. And I think they have issues running the ball. I'm looking at their schedule right now. They've I don't know. I really it's frustrating because you have at Notre Dame they won 17-14. You've got Rutgers, Michigan State, and Minnesota, and none of those teams really like you. I don't think you know what you're getting out of this Ohio State team, and that's kind of the way the Big Ten East has been. Is you play Penn State, which they won 20-12, and then after that, what are you doing? Like I know, Michigan struggled against Maryland, but in some sense, so did Ohio State. That was 37-17. That score was 17-20 going into the fourth quarter. So anyone who wants to talk about how like, oh man, Michigan is coming back to earth and Maryland's given people fits in the conference. They just haven't been able to pull off a big win all season. So I don't think that should be any indicator of Ohio State being better. If you look at Minnesota, which they beat Ohio State beat Minnesota 37-3. So I don't know. I mean, like Michigan, that line opened at 4, and now it's moved to 5.5 in favor of Michigan. So it's moved to 1.5 in about 24 hours. I think it's now moved down. It's hard to tell. This ESPN bet is what I'm going off of. So we'll say it's 4. It's moving around 4. Um, Michigan, they both have roughly the same. Like for example, the best opponent is Penn State, right? Ohio State beat Penn State 20-12 in the Horseshoe in Columbus. Michigan played them 2 weeks ago in Happy Valley or at Penn State, for those of you who don't know, 24-15. So it's like these are pretty two closely associated teams. Um, I mean, I know I was dogging McCord. McCarthy's numbers aren't that much better, but the run game for Michigan is. And plus, here's the thing: like, you have Marvin Harrison Jr., dude. Like, that guy should have at least 3,000 yards passing, and he doesn't. ESPN's matchup predictor has Michigan with a 55% chance to win. Um, some interesting things coming out of this. Um, Michigan is 5-5 against the spread this season and have not covered in 2 of the past 3 games that they played. And they're 1-4 against the spread at home this year. Meanwhile, Ohio State, who's the underdog, is 6-4 against the spread and has covered in 5 of their last 7. The last time the Ohio State Michigan game went under 46.5 points, which is the over under, was in 2010, and that was a 37-7 Buckeye win. This is the first time Michigan has been favored over Ohio State since 2018. Um, this should be a great game. Like everything says, this is going to be like this is the game. This is the Big 12 title game, essentially, right? Like no one thinks Iowa has a shot against these guys, right? No way. That'd be the greatest upset in history if Iowa beats these guys in the Big Ten title game. Um, I find it so weird that Ohio State is ranked above Michigan. I really do. I don't. I don't get it at all. I think that's the Harbaugh thing. Every time I watch Michigan play, I think to myself, and I say it every week, this is a really good football team. The one other thing I want to say is when people talk about that Maryland game, like I think it's important to I had the numbers up here. That score line, the final line was 31-24, but at one point that game was 23-10 and it looked like I'm sorry, 23-3 Michigan. So Michigan was about to run away with it and then just couldn't put things together and it stayed in. So they were very much Michigan was very much on the road to just stomping Maryland in Maryland's house and they couldn't do it. So if Michigan was at the Horseshoe in Columbus, then I think this is an even game. I think Michigan is gonna take care of business. I think they're gonna win. I think Ohio State's gonna start swearing Ryan Day's name, which sucks because you know, he's pretty much won everything except that game the past few years. So, um, with that being said, so that's it. Best game. Ohio State, Michigan, noon, Fox. Best backyard brawl, 7 o'clock Eastern time, Saturday, ESPN. Most intriguing game, Friday, 8:30 Eastern Standard Time on Fox. Best nightcap, Cal at UCLA. One of the last Pac-12 after dark games potentially. 10:30 Eastern on ESPN. Best bet, take Arkansas or take Arizona. And everyone have a wonderful, happy Thanksgiving. We are going to definitely have a conference title game podcast. We're definitely going to have a bowl podcast, and that may be it, which is freaking wild. So, thanks again if you listened all the way through. These are getting shorter and shorter as we go. I think part of it is there's like no more conjecture, right? Like it's these are the teams, this is what's going on. Just like today, we had only two games this week where both teams are ranked. So, it's just things are winding down. So, thanks for hanging out. I'll see y'all next week and we'll talk about conference title games.